Hello, welcome to the Mind Body Energy Project.
It's
We
the
are
Halloween
here.
special.
It is the Halloween special. How are you doing today, Tiff?
Just fantastic. I just got my coffee, so life has gotten exponentially better.
Well, I woke up at 6:30 so that I could have
Me
time
too.
to get coffee, but also research because this is the first topic we've done that I've actually done research on.
Yeah,
So,
same.
yeah, I had to get up early just to get
I
that
did it
out of the
last
way.
night. I was very tired, but I did it. And I started to get really sucked into the information, so I had to cut myself off also, because I know
Yeah,
how that goes.
it's so interesting. So, we're going to talk to you all today about the origins of Halloween.
Hmm.
And what we told you before was that our Halloween special was going to be Tiffany and I out there doing ghost tours. So, we want to tell you why you're looking at us in our normal format. But also, if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see that there's a post of Tiffany right now in front of a haunted house called the Whaley House, which is one of the most haunted historical sites supposedly in America. So,
Tell us
um,
why you say supposedly.
because I don't know, like, how do they come up with this stuff? Like,
I don't
you
know.
know what I mean? There
Yeah.
might be somebody's house somewhere that's much more haunted than the Whaley House, but I
That's
don't know.
true. But doesn't that bring us back to everything that we talk about anyways? Only the stuff that's been proven thus far is what
Right.
we kind of attach labels to, but then the stuff that hasn't, it's kind of like left out there.
Yeah. No, totally.
So
So,
stay
but
open-minded.
what I like about it is we have proof that we tried.
We
So,
did. Yeah.
Tiffany, why don't you tell them? We made an attempt, you guys, to really do this Halloween special for you out there.
We
Ghost
did.
tour
Yeah. We booked this far in advance. Well, we booked the day far in
in
advance
our minds.
in
Yeah.
our minds, and we had the day blocked off completely. And for both of us to have an entire day blocked off is a big deal. So
Yeah.
we blocked the entire day off to do this. And we tried to book a ghost tour, and there were two spots, and I communicated with Yolanda. I thought it'd be too late, but she was like, no, it's totally fine, but I'm a grandma when it comes to sleeping and nighttime. And then I went back to book it, and the two spots were gone. So we waited. I called, and then they said, just show up. If there's no shows, we'll get the spot. So we did. We waited. We toured around Old Town, looked at the Whaley House, and we got there, and she said there had been one no show. And she's like, they're still waiting for two or three more parties. And she's like, if somebody doesn't show, then you guys are in. We only got halfway there. There was only one spot, and we didn't want to separate. So
No. And
we didn't
so
do it. We're
we
sorry.
tried,
We
okay?
tried so
And
hard.
for those of you who've never been to San Diego, Old Town is the old town of San Diego. And so that's where the Whaley House is, the haunted house. So that's why we even have some pictures and things that we'll share with you or that are up by the time that you see this.
Mm-hmm.
So we tried, and so sorry it didn't pan out, but
You know.
we will work on some other specials in the future. We will have our acts together, but the
Yeah,
attempt was made.
it was
But
made. This is
even
how we learn.
so, yeah, it is how
This is
we
how
learn.
we learn.
So I want to just remind all of you before we get into talking about Halloween and its origins, and it's all really interesting, you guys, if you don't know. But our November energy update is available for our Mind Body Energy Project Insiders. So if you want to become an MBE Insider, go to our website, mbeproject.com, and you'll find out information of how to become one, and you will have access to our monthly updates. So
Mm-hmm.
that was fun because that day we were together in the same
Yeah,
location because it was our day that we are doing the ghost tour. And so you guys will see that Tiffany and I it looked like we were doing a talk show.
it did. The setting was so perfect, and we can't wait for a real talk show to happen. So keep supporting us
Yes.
and sending people to our site so that we can build some momentum. And
Oh,
what?
speaking of which, I'm so glad you said that. I don't know if you have looked lately, but this is like really exciting news for us, you guys. You don't know how much we get excited to see like your posts, any feedback, just
That's
knowing that
true.
you guys are here.
We
Um,
take screenshots of text messages or Instagram messages, and we take screenshots and send them to each other. And usually there's a happy face emoji and then the emoji that's crying, because
yeah,
that's exactly how we communicate about these
like
things.
we're so excited and we get, yeah. So, okay. So on iTunes, you know, we always ask you guys during the show, like, please go rate the show on iTunes, the podcast, because if you give us a rating, like a 5-star rating, it helps the podcast to become more visible. So if you haven't done that before, please do. But someone did an extra step and actually rated the show and left us a review. I'm probably going to kill this name. I don't know how to say it. It's like Galina.
Oh, Galina Keep. She's my friend.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, Galina's her first name. Keep is her last.
She put so much fun. Thank you guys. Love it.
Oh, yay.
So we got our first review on iTunes. So
yay.
You could help us
Thanks,
out by doing the same. Mind Body Energy Project. If you have an iPhone, there's a podcast app that you can download. iTunes podcast app. It's a little.
I think it's actually naturally on there on an iPhone.
Yeah, it's the little purple one you see there.
You don't even have to download it. It's already there.
So we appreciate that. So I had to.
Yes,
thank you.
Super exciting. Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. So anyway, so we have the November energy, which is super exciting. We're moving into Scorpio season. By the time you guys see this, we'll be just a couple of days away from Tiffany's birthday.
That's right. It's my favorite day of the year. So November 4th is my least favorite day of the year.
What is that, the day after?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
You're like hungover or something?
No, not, I mean, sometimes, but I'm more so like emotionally hungover because I have to wait 364 more days until that day happens again. And it just makes me so sad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we have to say happy birthday to you now, because by the time our next podcast airs, we will have gone past your birthday. So happy birthday, Tiffany.
Thank you.
We're sending some love out there on the day of. So November 3rd, everyone, remember, send your girl some love. So Halloween, the history of Halloween.
Super interesting.
It is really interesting. Do you want to start us off with, did you do some research too?
I did, yes. So the origin of Halloween is a holiday called, well,
Samhain.
a Celtic, Samhain. But it is spelt like Sam Hain. So in my brain, as I was reading, I'm like, Sam Hain, is that like a singer? What does he do? And I had to look up 3 different sites, and I actually re-downloaded dictionary.com on my new phone because I didn't put it on there yet. And it's one of my favorite apps because I know they pronounce it. And so I had to hear it pronounced because it does not look like Samhain at all, but it's Celtic or Gaelic or something. And we know how those languages deceive us. But the Samhain was the Celtic celebration at the end of the harvest season. So after the summer and they've gotten all their crops and harvest everything that had come to blossom to provide for them, is now they're moving into the winter. What?
I said it's all dying.
Yeah, they're moving into the phase of where that is no longer going to be living from the earth. It's going to be, they're going to be consuming it and keeping them alive through the cold, dead winter.
Well, that was the thing I have to say. And as we go through this, I mean, the things that jumped out at me is through all of this, Halloween or Day of All Saints, so there was a celebration of the Day of All Saints, which is November 1st. And, we'll talk about that. But Halloween was like the precursor, is the night before. But it's like in all of these traditions, there was always this theme of harvest. And then the dead coming back to this realm of the living on this time for some reason. And that was the part that I was like really interested in, is why people think the veil is thinnest during Halloween. And when I was reading this, very specific to the Celtic traditions, because the seasonal change and things were going to start to die, it was like they had a belief that because the spirits were here, the spirits were playing a part in like the death of the crops and like all of these things. So I was like, it's really interesting when you look at these older, like ancient civilizations, how they literally, their whole life revolved around nature, just nature. And so their translation or understanding of what was happening in nature, not being like science-based, but more so
out of their control. So it was more of a natural occurrence. Yeah, I found that super interesting. And when you think about it, it's like they didn't know then what we know now.
Right.
And again, there's still outliers that we don't know, but they were using the knowledge and wisdom that they had at the time. And for them, I mean, the Mayans worshiped the sun as a god, right? Because it gave them the crops, and it dictated their lives.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand how or why yet. They just had this thing to look at and be like, okay, like, please give us food, give us life, and when you are in your dark period, such as the winter, keep us safe. So what I saw was that, I forget what they called it, but it was a time of transition. And that was when the natural spirits of the world, the veil was thinnest, because as they were transitioning, and it was like a segue of like rites, like stepping through a ritual and into a rite. So the veil was the thinnest, because before they transitioned into this new period, they were just highly more affected by the natural spirits. And they called them the AOC. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but they were like fairies or like natural spirits in the Irish legends.
Well, what was interesting about that too, that I saw, was that they thought November 1st was their actual new year.
Yes.
And so the November 1st, and all of this was like even a celebration of the end of summer, and again, like the harvest. But I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Because again, you just reminded me of that saying, it was like this period of transition. But again, this idea that as the season was changing, that these spirits were the culprits of like why crops were dying and all of these things. They would reach out to the druids and Celtic priests to do fortune telling and predictions and all of these things, partially because of the transition, but also because they believed that the spirits were present. So it would have been easier to get information, or information even from the spirits themselves.
And I think not even just the natural spirits, but also their ancestors, which I think is what led into All Saints and All Souls Day.
Yes.
I don't know what the difference between All Saints and All Souls Day. I know they're November 1st and November 2nd. But they would feast. They would have feasts and stuff to share with their deceased ancestors, because the veil was thin. So they would call upon them to get their wisdom and, ask them for protection.
Yeah. Well, I think that I was looking up Hallows, because like they called it All Hallows Eve before it was transitioned into the term Halloween. And Hallows is a saint or a holy person. So it's like the eve of, again, the saints, or the celebrating all of the saints. But All Saints Day, from what I looked at, and even how it relates to Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, stems from Catholicism as like a Catholic holiday. It was back then too, although there are other cultural things that come into play that have nothing to do with that, which we'll get into. But yeah, I mean, it was mind-blowing to think a lot of this, because we celebrate so many things and don't think about the origin.
Right.
Or we do so many things and so many traditions.
Very American of us.
Yes, right? And we don't think
yeah.
about how it all originated. But I thought, like, okay, this is really interesting. That was a time of harvest, the end of the year. They feel like, the spirits are present, all of these things. But then, of course, like we talked about in the MBE Insider Energy of the Month, that we're also in the energy of Scorpio at this time. And Scorpio in of itself is all about death and transformation and rebirth and transition in a lot of ways, and its ruling planet Pluto. So it's interesting, like all of these different lines that connect, that make this make sense, even though we can look at it and say like, oh, they just came up with this stuff because they didn't know how else to explain
right, exactly,
the transitions of nature or whatever. But really,
it's interesting. I didn't see anything in my research that connected Scorpio, but it's really, there has to be something out there, right? I would assume, because it's
Scorpio season.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe
the sun is in
how they related the energy of Scorpio to what was happening in the seasons, perhaps.
I don't know. I don't know. The sun is in Scorpio at this time.
Questions now.
I know. Like, go deeper into that as well. But so they think that the night before this this celebration of the All Saints Day or whatever, that the dead would return to the earth. And I mean, if you think about that, I mean, it's really interesting because they also had the costumes and they would dress up and they would have these barn fires to ward off evil spirits. And again, they would have the priest and the druids, do fortune telling and all of these things.
And they would dress in disguises so that the spirits couldn't recognize them.
Yes. And then when that sacred bonfire went out, they would relight it the next day to protect them, as a symbol to protect them through the winter. But I think what's so interesting about it is all of the symbolism, I mean, like, I think that gets lost on us now in celebrating Halloween, and we just like wear costumes for fun and like trick or treat. Side note, did you get into that part? Did you see about trick or treating and how that all started?
Kind of. I mean, part of it was like that they were wearing the costumes to disguise themselves, but then they also went to each other's houses, and I got lost in the information a little bit. What did you find?
So, okay. So, this was like much later. So later on, it was like after 543 AD, like when the Romans had conquered most of like the Celtic territory, they started to merge some of their traditions with Samhain and, whatever. So they also had a celebration to honor the dead. The Romans did. And they also had this celebration that was of the Roman goddess Pomona. And she was the goddess of fruit and trees or whatever. So anyway, they started to merge the cultures together. And then fast forward, like once this, because, here in the Americas, there was a lot of immigration and things. So when these traditions started coming here and then even mixed in with the Native American cultures and all of this, there was they called them play parties. So they started having play parties over here. Ooh. Yeah. And people would celebrate the harvest, have stories of the dead, and have fortune telling, just like, we've seen historically. And then as more immigrants came here from like Ireland and England, more of their traditions came in. And so there was this period of potato famine in Ireland. And so when the Irish and the English came here, they brought this tradition of where you would dress up and go door to door and ask for either money or food.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that got lost on me. That's cool. I like that.
Right? So
I like the history. I don't like that people were starving and had to go.
No. But really cool that, so they would be in costume asking for money or food. And that, like, over time transitioned into the whole trick or treat thing. And then in the 1800s, I think it said the celebration of Halloween became more about community. And people were trying to take out the whole scary aspects of it and get it back rooted to, this celebration of community. And
that's interesting that people went because they needed food or money and they're asking door to door for food or money. And then we use the words trick or treat.
Oh.
I think that's kind of mean.
But no, because
there's an origin for that.
Yes, there's an origin for that. So somewhere in there too, some of the women, because the treat would be the food, but the trick would be that women, because again, that belief that the veil was thinnest was still in play. And so women would do tricks with yarn. I don't know, but they would do some kind of tricks with yarn. And they had this belief that because the veil was thinnest, they were able to, what do you call it? Like speak to spirits, but using yarn is almost like a form of divination.
Oh, interesting.
I know. I'm like, now, how did that work out exactly? So it was like, do you get the trick, or the treat?
Huh.
And now it's all candy.
Yeah. Going back to something you said earlier about like the traditions and stuff and the rituals, I think I really appreciate traditions. Some traditions. There's other ones that have gotten completely out of hand where I'm like, do we really need to do that? But like rituals, because even though, maybe we kind of understand what the sun does now and that it's not actually spirits that are killing our crops, we have a better understanding of that. But however, I think looking at the history and applying what those rituals are now to our lives make us a little bit more mindful and respectful of how we have evolved and how we move forward in our own evolution as well.
Yeah.
Because there's still, like, we might look back at these people and be like, God, they were pretty dumb, like thinking that spirits were killing their crops, you know. There'll be generations ahead of us that
Later.
will look back and be like, those idiots, like, why did they put plastic in the ocean, you know? So
Yeah.
the more mindful we get and go back to our roots of the nature that we've come from and how that actually evolves, I think is really important. And it
Yeah.
does get lost on us because we get so involved in our electronics and in social media and our day-to-day rat race that we forget how important the nature of things actually are.
Yeah. Well,
That
even
does
looking
for evolution.
at the history of this, it made me think about that. Well, the more of the traditional part of the origins of this as well, but thinking like, oh, it'd be kind of cool on Halloween to really take harvest of my year. Like, so not necessarily like my crops, but, you know, just take harvest of just be more reflective on that day. And last year I had a post where I put Beyond the Veil. I took the day of Halloween to go deeper beyond my own personal veil to see how deep I could go into my own self-connection. Because if the veil was thinnest, I was like, I'm more curious about my personal veil than like communicating with the dead, but you know, whatever. So, I mean, it's interesting too, how we can take these things and translate them into how they fit our more modern lenses as well. But this got me excited about Dia de los Muertos because being in Southern California, of course, we're like neighbors with Mexico. And I never saw, growing up on the East Coast, I don't remember ever seeing anything about Day of the Dead.
Me neither.
I don't think I even heard about Day of the Dead back then. And I remember coming here and around this time, which it's celebrated November 1st and 2nd, like the Day of All Saints. And I remember seeing like all of these beautiful painted skeletons, and I was like, what in the hell is this? You know, and it's ridiculous now because I've been here for years. And this is the first day I actually researched it. So I knew that it was because I have friends who celebrate it, and I know that they put altars, and it's not, it's like an honoring of the dead or a celebration of life and death. And people will put offerings on their altars for their loved ones who have passed away and in memory of them. But the history of it.
Give it to us.
Talk about it.
Can we hold on 1 second?
Yeah.
I want to press pause. Well, one, because I wanted to say that I'm lucky enough that my birthday is so close to this year. And I do that personal inventory every year. So I think my birthday is more of like, I celebrate New Year's on my birthday more so than January 1st.
Yeah.
And kind of look back at that year. But the other thing was, did you do any research on Pomona and bobbing for apples? There was something I noticed, and because that was part of one of the traditions, and it had to do with Pomona, the Roman goddess.
Yeah. So I
it.
glazed over something that had to do with bobbing for apples, but it's funny that you said that because there was one part where they talked about the different practices that people did, and it was matchmaking. So Halloween was also a time where matchmaking was a big thing for them because they felt, again, the veil was thin, they could connect with spirits, whatever. So in Ireland, there was this tradition of burying a ring in mashed potatoes that had something to do with like predicting a woman's future husband. And then in Scotland, they would have women name hazelnuts, maybe, but the names of the men that they were like prospective, like that they could marry or something.
Yeah.
They would throw them in the fireplace, and if they burned to ash, it was like that one is your prospective husband. And if they like exploded or something, it was like, nah, it's not going to work out for you.
So funny. There was try that one.
Yes, I know. There was another tradition of apple peels, taking apple peels and throwing them over their shoulders. And then when they would turn around and look at how the apple peels landed, if the peels themselves landed in a formation of what do you call initials, that was supposed to be a prediction of the initials of your future husband.
I love this.
How do you like them apples?
I mean, I wouldn't love it if it was something I didn't want. I'd be like, oh, really? That guy? I don't know. But
that's not really an L, is it?
Yeah.
I don't want Larry. Yeah. But I did glaze over something with bobbing for apples, and I don't remember what
Yeah,
it
I
said.
glazed over it too. I was really tired.
I was more so kind of like, oh, isn't there a Pomona in California? That's what stood out to me. I think we
I
have
think so.
a town
There's
called,
a Ramona.
yeah, but I
But I
think
feel
we
like,
have a
well,
Pomona too.
there are Pomona apples. That's
Oh,
a type of apple.
well, hey, I guess it's named after the goddess.
I guess
Yeah,
so, huh?
it's
Interesting.
fun. Like the most random stuff you learn. So, okay, so Dia de los Muertos,
Hmm.
which also means Day of the Dead. And I may be saying this entirely wrong in Spanish, but forgive me. Trying my best over here. So it originated in Mexico, but now it's celebrated like all throughout Latin America. And they said it originated like as far back with the Aztecs and the Toltec people. And to them, mourning the dead was disrespectful. And
That
I
makes
thought
sense.
that was really interesting
I
because
like that.
we mourn the dead, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think about that?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts about it. Um, so because we're in this realm of spirituality and we have our beliefs about what we think, us as spirits are and what happens to our spirit once this physical body dies.
Yeah.
And it's just a belief that I've adopted because it seems right to me. And from my experience and things that I've been through and some pictures that I have proves to be pretty certain in my life. And to not believe that and think that somebody just dies and go away, then that is sad, and then you mourn and then you're in this sadness state. But for me, like I really truly do believe that the physical body dies and the spirit passes on, and it, I don't know where it goes or what happens to it, but I do think that they're still here with us, and I do think that it is something to be celebrated. And while it is a human reaction to mourn that that person is missing, um, I think it's very natural, but at the same hand, I don't want to say it's selfish, but I think that there's a different way we can look at it to truly understand what the nature of spirituality is. Like, yes, they aren't physically here, we can't touch them, but to trust and know that they're elsewhere and like looking upon us, and that we can utilize them as a team, to kind of help us through this lifetime, just seems like it should be something a little bit more celebratory than mourning.
Well, it's funny you say that because in the research, one of the things they were saying is that it's um, show your love and respect for the deceased. But what stood out to me is it said because the people who have crossed over are still considered part of the community. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, yes. But and I don't know why, just hearing it in that way, I was like, oh, that's really cool. But the dead are still members of the community, and they're kept alive, not only through spirit, but also through our memory of them.
Yeah.
So you have this day of like honoring the memory of them. So on the altars, people will have like water and food to help, the spirits with this long journey back into the realm of the living, but also pictures of them and all of these things.
I
But
want to backpedal just a quick second.
yeah.
Sorry.
No.
I don't want to be taken wrong. I've had a lot of death in my life and a lot of really terrible situations that have been, I've had to go through a lot of stuff. So it's not an insensitive place where I haven't experienced it in a way that it's, I'm not insensitive about it.
Well, I don't think sensitive. I think it all is exactly what we've talked about before. It's perspective.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, like my grandmother, when she passed away, she's the love of my life. Like, are you kidding me? And yeah, there are times where I cry because I miss her physical presence.
Yeah.
But I also am thankful that I have the perspective that I have about people who have transitioned, because I feel like I'm still in relationship with her. Like her essence is never going to leave me. Do you know what I mean? So
and
yeah.
that exactly that essence too, when you're saying like they're still part of the community and their essence is still there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, when we mourn them, we kind of cut off the idea that everything they did in their lifetime has just ended with their physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't, because the community is created upon what energy they've put into their lifetime and what they contributed, and even the legacies that they've
Totally
left,
they live on through us.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it creates the evolution of the community. And I think that's important to remember and acknowledge.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I always say, like, being laid off is what like threw me into this path of, you know, this work in the spirituality. But honestly, like when I talk about it um a lot behind the scenes, and when I think about it, I really think it's a reflection of my grandmother, because she was so like giving and loving, and like she wanted to always help people. Like my growing up, if we had like, you know, shoes or clothes or anything that someone else needed, it wasn't even a question. Like we had to give it away, you know? So, and a lot of
I
what
want to
I'm
meet your
doing
grandma.
now, I know she was the best. So a lot in what I'm doing now, it's like I see her reflected through.
Oh, that's so
Um,
sweet.
yeah, the work that I'm doing and what matters to me is like
Yeah.
such a total, you know, to me, and that again speaks to like how I'm like, yeah, I totally still feel her essence. And I feel like I get to honor her through being the type of person she would have wanted me to be. Do you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
Yes.
yeah, no, I don't think that's
No,
just,
and I like that you say that, because as you're speaking, it makes me think like, if you weren't thinking about that and seeing that her legacy and what she's left is living on through you, you know, if it was more of a mindful, a mindless, like she's just dead, that's it, I'm sad she's not here, versus saying, oh, look at how she lives on through me.
Mhm.
um I lost my train of thought. It was going to be so good.
Well, while you remember it, I just want to point out, so people don't think it's like an exact mirroring. Our belief systems were totally different. Like my mom, my grandma was super religious. She'd probably be like, "What are you doing with tarot cards over there?"
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
not like I'm an exact replication of her, but her principles. I
Hmm.
think her principles and like her caring for people and wanting to help people is what it's my own expression of that, which looks
Yeah.
very different than hers.
But that's what it was. I think it's almost like if we just say, oh, they're dead, they're gone, that's it, then it cuts us off from the idea of seeing what aspect of them is in us and how to carry it forward. You know,
Yep.
I think that the more that you see that in yourself, it adds value to the work that you do, and it just snowballs it into a bigger effect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing when we think of it that way. And so
Hmm.
then again, I mean too, I mean doing the research today on the Day of the Dead, it really made this all so much more beautiful to me. Like now I want to actually call some friends and see if they're going to any celebrations and if I can go with them and just kind of
Yeah.
like have the experience, be immersed in
I know. I want to now too.
the celebrate. I mean, it's going to be easy to find. I mean, it's
I know.
all over the city. So these were a couple of fun facts about Day of the Dead. So it is November 1st and 2nd. And as we know, the 1st is All Saints Day. And it's also the time around their fall harvest as well. So there's that whole harvest thing again. Um, but the altars are, people make these altars. Sometimes you'll see them out at the grave sites, but people also do altars in their home. And again, they have like water and food and photos and all of this, but it's to honor the dead, but also to like welcome them back into the realm of the living for this day, because they think they're just here temporarily, like on this day. So they have those and candles for each person who has passed on. But then there's marigolds. So, you know, on the Day of the Dead, like you'll see a lot of those beautiful
Yeah.
marigold flowers all over.
Hmm.
So they said that a lot of the altars are decorated with the marigolds, but then the marigolds that you see out into the street, it's like the petals are a path for the dead to
To
help
find
them
it.
return. Yeah,
Oh,
help
I
them
love that.
return back to their grave site. So like they come into the realm and then help them return back to their place of rest. I was like, God, that's so beautiful.
We should have found a graveyard to go to on Sunday.
Yeah.
I tried to offer one and you weren't having
Oh
it.
no, yeah, no. I was not going to. Yeah, what you were talking about, no ma'am. No
We
ma'am.
should have found a
No
different
way.
one.
Yeah. Well, this
There
is the
aren't
only
too
one I know
many.
about. I
They're
know.
hard to find in San Diego.
Yeah, well,
When I go home to the East Coast, the Northeast, they are everywhere. And
yeah,
there's some
I
like
don't really like
super old
graveyards.
rickety ones. I love
The
them. I think they're so
only
beautiful.
No, the only ones I've ever seen that I think are really pretty are the ones in New Orleans because they have the
Oh
mausoleums and
yeah.
they're above ground.
Yeah.
Those are beautiful to me, and they're haunting and
Yeah.
they're beautiful. And then there's like all these like weeping willow tree. I mean, the
Hmm.
whole thing is gorgeous. But no, ma'am, Pam. Mm-mm.
There are ones in Connecticut when we go to my brother's house where they're the thin tombstones and some of them are like this and some of them are like that, and it's like
Yeah.
on a hill and I love it.
No,
I love
thanks.
it.
Well, they also burn this incense called copal incense that's made from tree resin, and the smoke of that is supposed to carry like the praise and the prayers and
Oh, that's cool.
also purify the altar. But as we're saying this, again, it's like one of those things that's making me think like that would be nice. So, like on my desk, I have this thing. It has two roses in there. You can't really
Oh,
see the
that's
red
pretty.
one; it's so
I
dark.
see. I
And here's
see.
a white one.
Uh-huh.
So these are from the funerals of my grandmother and my stepfather. So one from each, and it's
Yeah.
always on my desk. But I was like, oh, maybe this year I will do a whole like, I
Are you
don't know
gonna
if I'm
burn
gonna do
them?
a full no,
Oh, okay.
no,
Don't.
no, no. But I might do an altar and like take
Yeah.
the time to like connect
Yeah,
with
I kind of
them
want
and
to also. I want
yeah,
to do that. I
and
have a rose in my kitchen that I bought after somebody very close to me passed away. And like I heard her in my head and like I saw the rose and it was this big, beautiful rose. It was actually quite expensive for one single rose. But
yeah.
I heard her and it looked like her. It just had her energy. So I bought it and it dried out incredibly well and it
Mhm.
sits in my kitchen and when I see it, it reminds me of her.
Yeah, I
So I
did.
might do an
I
altar
hung
too.
these ones upside down after the funerals. I had
Hmm.
them upside down intentionally to let them dry out so that I could keep the bulbs intact. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, like maybe you all will want to do something to honor your loved ones on this
Yeah.
day when the veil is thinnest, whether it's Halloween or a day of saints, the 31st or the 1st. And
Hmm.
if you do, like tell us, post pictures of your altars, or
Yeah.
if there's stories you want to share about your loved ones who may have passed away, things that make you smile, or impressions of people who are significant to you who have passed away and how their essence still lives through you in any way. Like
Yeah, that's
share it
beautiful.
with us. But
Hmm.
here's the big one. So, on the Day of the Dead, we always see the beautifully painted skulls.
Hmm. The
So,
sugar skulls.
yes. So, I saw a part about this. There was this Mexican political cartoonist, and he created an etching to accompany. There are these things called literary calaveras, which calavera means skull, and they were these like poems that were kind of humorous and sarcastic that poked fun at the living, and I guess they were read at during Day of the Dead festivals or
Hmm.
celebrations. Well, he created this etching to go along with it, and so he created this a skull. That's what the my brain just went blank, but a drawing of
Yeah.
this to go along with this. And he was famously quoted for saying, it's in Spanish, and I'm not going to try, but it translates to "We are all skeletons," like kind of like we're all the same beneath the surface type of thing.
Hmm.
But his name was Jose Guadalupe Posada. And then jump ahead to 1947. Diego Rivera.
I don't. Should I?
Yeah, you do.
Are you sure?
Yeah, the
I don't know him.
Frida's husband.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, so he had this famous mural called "Dream of a Sunday Afternoon" in Alameda Park, and he took like a rendition of that skeleton made by Posada, but he put a fancy feminine hat on it, and so that became the symbol for the Day of the Dead. So the skeletons with the beautiful painted faces and these
Hmm.
big fancy
Love
hats, which there is a picture on Facebook of me with one of these skeletons. There
it.
will be by the time you see this. So anyway, and he called it Katrina, which meant the rich. So yeah, so the Calavera Katrina is the skull that we commonly see in Day of the Dead. There you
Interesting.
go.
Yeah, I
And
like
scene.
that.
Yeah. I was
Great
like,
job,
yeah,
Yolanda.
there's just so much really cool information about all of this stuff. And they have this papel picado, like, you know, those cutouts, those square cutouts that are all different colors. And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, and those are used beyond Day of the Dead, but they're also hung a lot throughout the Day of the Dead festivals because they represent the wind and the fragility of life.
Ooh, I
All
love
the
that.
symbolism. I'm like, God, I
Yeah.
love
Give
it
it to
all.
us. It's so good.
Yeah, so when we look at all of these things now, I mean, it's cool to see the history and the origin of things because now instead of just looking at something flat, we kind of, I think it gives us more respect for
Yeah.
whatever it may be because we're like, oh, there's meaning
Yes.
to all of this.
And it brings a vitality to life and what we see around us.
Yeah.
And it brings us more into the present moment, which is where we should be living.
Yeah.
Because in the present moment, you see more of the beauty of life.
And I want to also tell anyone, like, if you know some more about the history of Halloween or even about the Day of the Dead, please share because,
Yeah.
you know, I only read so much and I'm sure there's so much more rich information. If you find anything interesting about either that you want to share with us, please share it because Tiffany and I love to learn. So
We sure do.
thank you, history.com and
I
nationalgeographic.com.
was looking at history.com too last night.
Yeah.
Go
Really,
figure.
really cool. So, honoring the dead, fortune telling, harvest, costumes, trick or
hmm
treat, all of these amazing things. Hope you guys all have fun. Do you have any plans? Are you dressing up this year?
I have been back and forth about it. Because if I don't have a good idea and I haven't created the costume from scratch, then I'm just like, I try to ignore that it's happening altogether. But I do have a bunch of costumes that I've made from past years. I'm going to go up to my friend's house and hopefully catch some trick-or-treaters because not like catch them. I'm not going out with a net and trying to catch them. And
Yeah, right. I know you.
I
Scorpio.
but I've actually never handed candy out to kids because growing up, I lived on a really busy street and I was on a hill. So nobody ever trick-or-treated there. And then because I love the holiday so much, I've always been out.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go up to my friend's house. They just moved to this large neighborhood and I think they'll have some trick-or-treaters. So I'm going to go hang out there. I might just dress a little bit more spooky than normal.
Yeah. At least do some like cool makeup.
Yeah, I think I am.
Could
Yeah,
you like put some effort for the kids, Tiff? I mean, come on. I say that and I'm doing no effort at all.
I
These kids
know.
will receive
Well, I'm
candy.
afraid like when I put effort in, it's like there's no like neutrality. There's no mediocrity. It's like it's all of it
All or
or it's
nothing.
nothing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna try to find. I know, right? It's so weird.
Wait, oh, I got Halloween nails.
I know they look so good. They
Woo!
look so good.
Yeah, that's about as Halloween as I'm getting. That's it. Here's my costume right here, and I'm going to hand out candy, and that is it. And you know, I'm really excited that we're moving into this new energy November. I mean, we always at this time of year start thinking about, you know, being really reflective and our ideas for what we want to do in our next cycle. And so it'll be fun, whatever it is that we talk about next month. And we did mention in our last episode that we will touch on like the energy of the holidays and what
surviving the holidays, I think is what we called it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
stay
in the
tuned.
meantime, if anybody has any suggestions of what they want to hear for our next topic or topics in the future.
Anything you want us to research?
Yeah, we love researching.
Yeah.
Give it to us.
Yeah, we really appreciate you all. I mean, we tell you all the time, but just like our excitement from this podcast review, like we really, truly, we love getting your messages, whether you post on Facebook or email us privately, whatever you do. Just like Tiffany said, we screenshot and share with each other. And we're like, oh,
maybe we should be posting our screenshots on Instagram every once in a while because they really are. A lot happens in the background. Like so much stuff is happening in the background, and we put so much time and effort and work into this. And there are very special moments like that Yolanda and I share when we're, you know, communicating these things to each other, just in case one person doesn't see it. But maybe we should be sharing it with them too, so they see how much we really appreciate and love all of the feedback you
No,
get.
we really do. And it's like we can't even say it enough. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it really would help us out though if you would go to iTunes and rate the Mind Body Energy Project. That means the world to us. And if
Hmm.
you leave an actual written review, we will read it live because we're going to be so excited about it. And yeah, I guess that's it for now, right?
That's
Happy
it. Yeah.
Halloween.
Hmm.
Safe out there.
Yep.
Send us some
Enjoy.
candy.
And send us pictures of your costumes too.
Yes, yes.
That
Post
would
your
be fun to see.
costumes. I would love to see that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we're both boring Betty. So yeah.
Well, that is not true. I have plenty of costume
this
pictures.
year, this
Okay.
year, I'm saying.
Well,
Not
hey, it hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet. So
yeah, you might
there's
shock
still
us.
time.
I'm not going to shock you. I promise. I'm gonna no. So let me live vicariously through all of you.
All
Okay, my
right.
love.
Well, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Happy Halloween.